Hey everybody, before you click away, yes, we are going to talk about Donald Trump, and yes, this is a video game. It'll make sense later, I swear. Welcome back, by the way, to my regular viewers. And by the way, we're just talking today, although we are going to use ARK to demonstrate how to survive the Trump administration. I can't believe I'm even saying that, but if I can tell you one thing that nobody else is talking about, it's going to be this thing that I'm going to be talking about in a few minutes. This thing is the most basic thing you have to get right in order to survive the next 4 years well. And that is the truth. And what it is, and how we find it, because let's face it, we have a president who's unconnected at best to the concept, I think because he's never really studied it. It's a very basic idea, something we think we already know, but which is something that most of us, likewise, haven't ever really thought much about. And that is the objective truth. Objective truth, you say? What is that? Well, it's that which aligns to how the world really is. Correspondence theory. So, let's break that down, shall we? Take this statement. There is a stone pillar on a stone foundation. Let's compare this to another statement. Strawberry ice cream is the best ice cream. Now, what's the difference? Well, for starters, the pillar is already on the stone foundation. And that's the same for everyone, whether they really believe it's the case or not. And, also important, it's the case whether they can see it or not. Close your eyes. Is it still there? You bet your shiny metal ass it is. But the statement about strawberry ice cream is only true for the person who believes it to be so. Me, to be precise. It's only the best in the world according to me because I'm expressing what's known as a subjective preference. And while it's objectively true that I prefer strawberry ice cream, it's not objectively true that everyone prefers strawberry ice cream. So there's your first lesson. Telling the difference between objective truth and subjective preference. Now, let's twist the concept a bit. Between every objective truth and every person is something that allows interpretation of the facts to get in the way of things. I'm going to enlist the help of some of my animal friends here. Say hello to Mrs. Woodchuck the Beaver and Dodo the Dodicurus. Now, let's take this statement again. There's a stone pillar on a stone foundation. Now, let's look at Mrs. Woodchuck. She says, "Oh, yes, there is a stone pillar on a stone foundation." And then there's Dodo. She says there isn't one. Is Dodo wrong? No. Because the reason Dodo is saying there isn't one is because there is no real stone pillar on a real stone foundation. Ultimately, she reasons, it's just zeros and ones. So, does that mean that Mrs. Woodchuck is wrong? Well, no, because obviously there is a stone pillar on a stone foundation. It's just that they're both digital representations of the physical things and are not in themselves physical. So Mrs. Woodchuck and Dodo are both right because of the different ways in which they're interpreting the world as they understand it. Now, both ways of understanding that statement, as both digital pillars and physical pillars, comport equally well with reality. There's a digital pillar there, but there is no physical pillar there. Pro tip, there is rarely a time when a set of facts can be interpreted in one single way. In other words, context is king. So, am I saying that anything goes and there are no facts? Or dare I say it that alternative facts exist? Ooh, no! And emphatically to both. Both of these are valid interpretations of the objective facts on the ground. And there is still room for falsehood. Let's get rid of the stone pillar. Now, let's consider the statement again. There is a stone pillar on a stone foundation. Is that true in any context right now? No! It's false in every conceivable way of looking at the world. Why? Because it's obvious that there is no stone pillar on a stone foundation. Saying there is does not correspond with the way the world really is. So yes, there is still such a thing as objective truth as opposed to falsehood. Even when the same set of facts can be interpreted multiple ways. So, what accounts for these two lovely dino ladies arriving at different conclusions with the same set of facts and observations and so on? A fancy philosophical term called a presupposition. These are basic beliefs about the world that we all have and we automatically filter any information we receive through them. Each of us have presuppositions that lead us to different conclusions while still having the same set of facts and observations to work from. So, if we recognize that each of us come to the table with different ways of seeing the world, then we are free to disagree with each other while still thinking of each other as good people. But we're not done yet. Now that the pillar is indeed gone, let me introduce you to some of the more, shall we say, high-flying personalities around here. Meet A-Wing Mark II and Arlene the RG. Now, I want to ask you, what happens if we introduce real bona fide error into the equation? Well, let's just say these birds were flying by, and A-Wing, the Pteranodon here, was flying high and fast because he's a Pteranodon and they go really fast, and he caught a glimpse of this structure on the platform. He believes it was a stone pillar on a stone foundation, but since he's going so fast, he didn't really get a good look at it. Now, Arlene the RG was also flying by, but she got a good look because RGs are slow and terrible. But anyways, she knows that this thing is not a stone pillar. That's what counts. But because she's terrible, she continues to tell people that there is a stone pillar on a stone foundation. So, are both birdies lying? Well, no. A-Wing isn't lying because in order to lie, you first need to know what is true. Being mistaken about what is true is not the same thing as intentionally telling something that is not true. It just means you're wrong, not that you intend to be wrong. So, how do we know when another person is lying and is not simply mistaken? Well, here's where it gets tricky, because A-Wing and Arlene also have presuppositions that we have to account for. Let's say in this case that A-Wing has the mistaken presupposition that he can fly by this platform really fast and make out what's on it. And if he didn't have that presupposition, then he wouldn't have said that there is a stone pillar on a stone foundation out there, because he's honest. Now, in this example, we already know that Arlene is lying because she's a dirty bird, so let me introduce Potshot. Like the other two birds in our soaring assortment of avian adventurers, she too was flying high up in the sky and is saying that there is currently a stone pillar on a stone foundation down here. But, unlike A-Wing, we don't know if she was mistaken, and unlike Arlene, the RG here, we don't know if she was lying. So what evidence tells us that Potshot is lying, whereas the A-Wing wasn't? After all, A-Wing was flying by, and so was Potshot. Both were high up. Perhaps Potshot made the hasty conclusion as well. Perhaps she really had the same presuppositions A-Wing did and thought she could see clearly from further away. But we're not sure. And that's why we need to be careful when tossing the label liar around. It's very possible that a person with mistaken presuppositions very much resembles an actual liar on the surface. And it would be a grave injustice to tarnish someone's reputation and say they intended to mislead people just because they made an error in judgment. Sure, making a mistake is bad enough when it really matters, but lying is far, far worse, because with it comes the intent to deceive. So, in order to properly conclude whether Potshot is lying or not, we need more information. If we knew, for example, that Potshot was flying by slowly, then that would make it harder for him to persuade others that she'd flown by too fast when she got caught. But if we found out she was going as fast as A-Wing, then that would lend credence to the theory that she just didn't see it well enough. However, it's not usually that easy to find this information out. Usually, we have to sift through multiple situations, biding our time in suspicions, and being alert to when we find out that Potshot's actions and words add up to the story she's telling, or don't add up. But even if there were some mismatches between what we think is true and what Potshot says is true, it's always possible that our own presuppositions are leading us astray. What if I didn't like Potshot? Then, since I'm human, I would tend toward negative interpretations of the facts. I may see things that aren't really there, and then in that case, I'm the one who becomes like A-Wing because I'm making an error in judgment about Potshot. In other words, I may be seeing something apparent from afar without all the information because I assume I already have the information I need to tell the difference. But it may actually be that Potshot is also like A-Wing and was just mistaken in what she saw after all. So do you see how confusing this gets? So if we're going to conclude that Potshot is a liar, we need to be pretty darn sure. And this is the secret to living in today's society. Recognizing that determining truth is a lot harder than it seems on the surface, and recognizing that we're just not that good at it in general. This calls for one thing: humility. If we have just a little bit of humility and become open to the possibility that our own presuppositions or beliefs could be wrong, then we'll be a lot slower to label other people liars, or haters, or just generally bad people. We'll de-escalate the conflict between us and our neighbors, and we'll actually be able to talk to each other again. So, let's review. We talked about the difference between objective truth and subjective preference. Objective truth is that which corresponds to reality. There is a stone pillar on a stone foundation is true because now there is again. It corresponds. Strawberry ice cream is the best ice cream is a personal preference because it's not true for everybody. It's just true because I happen to like strawberry ice cream. We then talked about the ways in which the same facts can be interpreted and that it's possible for multiple interpretations to be valid and to be made in good faith. We talked about how our presuppositions are different beliefs about the world and how they can lead us to different conclusions. We then talked about the difference between error and lying and how it's difficult but still possible to tell the difference. And finally, we concluded by recognizing that we need to approach truth-telling and fact-finding with humility and by taking the time to listen and learn from others who don't think like we do because our own presuppositions could lead us to error, and that we ourselves should strive to stay open to the possibility that we could be wrong. After all, it might turn out that our neighbor who disagrees with us, and, let's be honest, who we don't like all that much, is someone who can help us to correct our presuppositions by simply exposing us to his point of view, as long as we have the patience and grace to listen. By showing such respect, we honor our fellow man, de-escalate the conflict that divides us, and we become a unifying force for the good of our society, whether we ever convince anyone to agree with us or not. Ultimately, it's the moment when we believe we already have all the facts that is the moment that we ourselves begin spreading falsehoods. Now that we have the basics of truth-finding out of the way, let's talk about a few practical questions to ask yourself that will help you practice this truth-finding in the age of Trump. Number 1. How skeptical are we of the things we read online? Don't immediately believe the things you read online, especially if they appear to confirm what you already believe or fear might be true. This is the start of maintaining a healthy life of the mind. 2. Does your information come from reliable primary sources, which are generally not opinion columnists, comedians, celebrities, or Twitter accounts? Primary sources are materials directly related to the topic by time or participation, and are things like speeches or news articles or photographs that provide first-hand accounts about a person or event. 3. Do you have at least 2 separate primary sources to confirm what you're hearing? 2 primary sources saying the same thing adds a lot of credibility to that thing. Enough to stand up in some courts of law, so you know it's a good standard to have for yourself. 4. Have you waited at least 24 hours before making a conclusion about something you've heard so that new information has time to come to light? 48 hours is better, but if you're pressed for time, 24 will do. The point is, Twitter is full of misinformation that appears true at the time it's reported, but it's usually quickly obsoleted a few hours later as new context and information is discovered. 5. Don't believe people with British accents just because they sound smart. Thought I was a real Brit? Then A, you're probably not British, or I'm just that good. Or B, you've never seen one of my videos before, in which case, you should subscribe. My channel's normally about convincing you that you can be creative even if you don't think you are, by inspiring you to try your hand at building things in ARK and Minecraft. So hit that sub button and ring that bell if you want a steady diet of that goodness. Although, little note, there's going to be a brief drought of ARK videos while I record a bunch ahead of time. So don't worry, ARK's not going anywhere, and please, 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 hit that like button if you want more philosophy videos. Because the surest way to survive the Trump administration, hell, any administration, is by cultivating a healthy mind that knows how to discern truth from error. And if you hated this, hit the dislike button. Don't worry, I can handle it. You'll be helping me out either way, because we all know that YouTube thrives on controversy, sort of like all those other social media outlets out there. Oh, well, that's another topic for another time. Thanks for watching. My name is SWChris. Auf Wiedersehen. Arrivederci. Hasta la vista. Bye-bye.